Wish to call this meeting to order. Welcome back to all my fellow directors who've returned from Ottawa safe and sound. I would like to start this meeting with an acknowledgement that we recognize that the CBRD is on the unceded territories of the Quitsin, Malahat, Sabasic, Halalt, Penelakut, Sinamis, Liaxin, Patquichin, Ditidat, and Pachidit nations, whose peoples have walked gently here for thousands of years. Turning to the agenda, could I get a motion to adopt the agenda? So moved by Chair Segal, a seconder by Chris Eustache, Director Eustache. Moving on to the adoption of the minutes of May 7th. Everybody's had a chance to read them. Can I get a motion to approve? Again, Director Segal. Again, seconded by Director Eustache. Business arising from, any business arising? There does not appear to be anybody from the public, either online or in the gallery. No delegations.
Order.
What's your point?
Would you like us to vote?
Let's go back and vote on the agenda. Rattle through. Thank you, Director Martin. All in favor of the agenda? All in favor of the minutes? And now I'll move on. No business arising from? And there are nobody in the public? No delegations? No correspondence, Mr. Robbins?
Right into reports.
Right into reports. And turning to report number 1, which I'm sure filled the gallery today, the seats, a policy about remuneration. And turning to Mr. Pidal to
Thank you, Chair Abbott. So I'm sure all of you have had an opportunity to review the report provided by myself for information, as well as the appendices or attachments with the previous bylaws and the HWC report on board remuneration. I do want to just acknowledge the sensitivity around board remuneration and understand that there's going to be some good discussion this morning. I do want to emphasize that when I asked HWC to work with us, I said, let's follow the guidelines provided by the UBCM report. So the report itself, the recommendations themselves are rooted in the best practices as presented by UBCM. As you're well aware, we really wanted to try and provide a report that provided a foundation for the future focus and defensible decisions around board remuneration. So based on data, as best we could to measure things apples to apples as best we could, try to remove as much subjectivity out of it as best we could. And really what it came down to is to really try and understand what sectoral comparators look like, what the evolving role expectations of the various positions on the board look like, and of course just principles of good governance in general. As you probably are already aware, the key findings are that the EA directors, the electoral area directors, are paid slightly above the comparator median by about 5.2%. Now, in all the compensation work that I've ever done, typically what you're going to look is 5% either way. So if you're 5 below or 5 above, we generally, at least in the remainder of the compensation world, would say that we're statistically competitive with the market. Now, obviously, looking at elected officials, that's a little bit different because there's no competition, except for the competition when you're running for office. So, municipal directors are slightly below the median at 6.7%, which may undervalue some of the strategic and value and leadership roles, of course, that they have. And then the biggest outliers were that the chair stipend itself is significantly below the median at minus 17.2% is what we found across the comparators. And I don't have the list of comparators in front of me, but they were based on best practice in compensation studies, so size, population, services provided, budget, etc. So once again, we tried to do our best to measure apples to apples when it came to who are we using for comparators, because it wouldn't make sense if we were comparing ourselves against, a village or maybe Metro Vancouver. right? Those are on the opposite side of the spectrum. Overall, the report itself says that the model should really continue with our salary-based model. Right now, as you would have seen in the report, some of the districts, our comparative districts, are paying per meeting. Others are paying basically just a salary per annum. That model is recommended by UBCM as well as by HWC as well. Partially because of administrative reasons, but other reasons is that things do ebb and flow. And so it is best practice, and that's why they're making that recommendation. And then when it comes down to the rest of it, I won't go through everything because I know you've read it already, but when it really comes down to it is we've got the report for information, and if at the will of the board or the committee, you can elect to provide staff direction to move forward, and we'll go from there. And with that, Chair Abbott, I'm willing to accept any questions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Pilo. That's a very good report with lots of supporting documents. It was a good read, and I'm sure it's going to prompt some questions, starting with Director Kallio.
I can change seats here.
Okay, and I hit the wrong button.
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you, Ian. Good report as always, kind of thing. I have a few comments and then I do have a question here. I'm not a great believer in comparators because it sometimes lead to, well, they get this, so we should get that kind of thing. So I'll leave that comment where it is. And I'm not a great believer either in the pay per meeting stipends either, because that, as we've seen in other places, can lead to a lot of messing around, to say the least. Vice chair stipend, that's an interesting one. And the reason I mention that is that I think I'm vice chair, but I've not done anything for the last year or two. So I wonder whether it's worth me getting paid, as a figure there, $7,600 a year, just for doing nothing. That's not right. If the vice chair is going to be paid, then he should be working on doing something. So that one I'm not happy with at all. And the last one, yeah, sorry, I do have a question, I promise.
I want to recognize Director Segal.
Like Director Mackay, but
That's the one. There you go.
thank you. Just a point of order, I believe the report is referring to the vice chair of the board, not of
okay,
committees.
okay. In that case, I withdraw. Sorry about that. One of the things that comes to mind here, there's two things. A, the EA directors are above the norm. That I knew. But one of the things that Ian and I did discuss just now is that this doesn't include the benefits that we get. And that's the medical plan, which is worth a huge amount of money, probably in the region of $5,000 a year, which would take us way above what the other EA directors are getting, as if you're going to use the comparator. And maybe Ian can mention that as well in the question that I'm getting to. And the new remuneration bylaw, what would that actually mean? Would that mean that we're looking at what's you've asked us to consider here, Ian, or would it say that we will do this, this, and this? Thank you.
Through the chair to Director Wilson, if the committee is to elect to make recommendation to the board with regards to bylaw revisions, it would reflect, or at the will of the board, of course, it would reflect the recommendations provided by HWC. That would mean primarily that we would do a pseudo study every 3 years, just to make sure that everything is on par. That would come typically 1 year before an election, and the decision would be made to be implemented following the election. So that's the first piece. The second piece is that we would move from our current model, which is annual general wage increases are the result of negotiated amounts with QP Local 358, to CPI.
Okay.
And to speak to your comments earlier about, doing a market study is always like the race to the top, essentially, is to kind of put it into those words. The whole idea with CPI is that if we're looking at trying to remunerate at the median, the 50th percentile, then CPI will just always continually keep us on track. We're not going to lead, we're not going to lag against the market. And then simply a review is just a gut check every 3 years to make sure that, hey, there aren't any significant gaps, like we found in this report, particularly with the chair's remuneration rate.
Good. And follow up, please, Mr. Chair, if I could.
Please.
Very, very quickly on that particular thing there, what I don't want to see, what I would not like to see, is that, everybody else in the industry, in the country, is sticking to 2.5%, 3%, 4%. I would hate to see us go anything above what the rest of the country is getting, because it's just going to lead to another, the politicians are rewarding themselves more rises above what everybody else is getting. That's the last point. Thank you.
So, and just to speak to that with regards, if that's okay, Director Abbott, or Chair Abbott, I should say, that's one of the motivations of moving to CPI. Because when you look at historically negotiated amounts with any collective agreement for that matter, typically they are slightly higher than CPI. And so this would, the recommendation here is to follow CPI based on Victoria. And so this would make sure that at least within this region, and likely even within British Columbia, we're going to remain on par. Being paid fairly and equitably is the goal. Yes, thank you.
Mr. Peidel, just Director Wilson brought up comparators with employee benefits or director benefits. Can you touch on how we compare?
I can. So when it comes down to it, the HWC report, I did ask them to take a look at who else is providing benefits out there for their boards. Now, obviously, UBCM does offer some options for benefits. Various local governments will choose to elect or not to elect to go that route. Our route is that we provide benefits through Sun Life to the board, no different than anybody else gets here as employees as well. When we looked at our comparators, there were only two others that followed suit with us, and that was RDN and Comox Valley Regional District. Director Wilson, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but Director Wilson is reasonably accurate in terms of his assessment, about $5,000 a year, in terms of what the organization would provide, if we're to boil it down to a dollars and cents perspective, for benefits for each of the directors and their families. Family benefit coverage is slightly higher, but overall, I think that's a pretty good assessment.
Thank you. Turning to an online director, Director Morrison, please. You're still muted.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
I have a number of questions. I'll maybe fire a couple here and see where they take us. The first question is in regards to median. And I know this has been discussed in other previous iterations and discussions, and I think it's helpful to know what our definition of median is, and is it taking the six or the comparators that we have and counting, if there's 6, 1, 2, 3, and pegging that as a median, or are we talking about an average? And I do know there's a difference in that, and so I'd start with that one, and if I could have a follow up after that, that would be great.
Mr. Peidel?
Absolutely, through Chair Abbott to Director Morrison. You are correct, Director Morrison. The median is essentially you would take the comparators and count to the middle. So it's not the average. The average is obviously just that. If you have 10 comparators, you're going to understand, say, for example, how many meeting hours are worked, or the remuneration, and divided by the amount of comparators. That would equate to the average. So the median is typical and best practice in compensation research because it does provide a way to smooth out the anomalies.
Thank you, Mr. Peidel. And your follow-up, Ian?
Thank you, and a follow-up for that. I would ask if there has been any success or headway in locating the director hours per week worked are dedicated to the role that was done, and I'm thinking it was a decade ago. But have staff had any luck in finding that work that was done by HR? And I'm thinking it was 2012 or 2014. Is there? Do you have any information on that, Mr. Pidle?
It was brought to my attention that I think through you, Director Morrison, to our CO, that some work had been done in the past. I did take a look to see if there was anything that I could find, and unfortunately there was nothing. 2012 was quite some time ago, and unfortunately I couldn't find any substantive evidence of that work being completed. There are like, I guess, crumb trails, if you will. Obviously, the work was completed. I just I couldn't find any of the information offhand.
Thank you, Mr. Pidle. Perhaps it warrants a refresher in 2025, 2026. We can ponder that. And Director Morrison, if I could ask you to hold on further questions, we'll turn to somebody on the floor. Turning to Director McGonigal, please.
Pulling it closer. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Pidle. First of all, I appreciate that municipal councillors were identified in your report. Given the significant amount of increased burden that is placed on municipal councillors that was not present in the past, given that we have taken on more functions regionally, sub-regionally, etc. I appreciate that we have utilized an outside consultant instead of doing it within the board itself. I think that is transparent and good practice, best practice. When I look at the report and I see the various comparators, I also consider the medical covers that is provided for directors as a significant portion of our stipend. Many municipalities also offer that, aside from regional districts. And it is an enticement for people to maybe put their name forward. If we look at some of the language within pay for meetings, I am adamant and vehemently adamant that that is not the path we go down, considering some of the antics within the Metro Board, for instance, and the uproar of that compensation is not tenable. I would like to see that this be implemented each year prior to the election, so that the outgoing board is setting the stipend and remuneration for the incoming board. I think we struggled in the past trying to incorporate that into the structure, and if that is placed within a policy of remuneration updates, I think that's important. CPI is the way to go, in my view. I think that once you have attained that median, then you do remain within that with a CPI increase. When we look at negotiated settlements tying our remuneration to that, that doesn't seem transparent either. When we set to you what you should be looking for in the negotiation process, we're also setting our own remuneration. So I like to see that that is just kept within the CPI. And I'm wondering if it would be appropriate to look at MPI instead of CPI. Given that there is significant increase in costs for municipalities and regional districts in the capital projects that they do, as opposed to CPI. So just something to look at, whether that would be attainable.
Was that a question or?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
With regards to MPI versus CPI, that would be something we could look into. It is not something that I have come across, if I'm being honest, amongst compensation reviews, etc. But that being said, most of the compensation work I have done is not for elected officials. And so maybe it is appropriate for elected officials. We'd have to do further research on that. The one thing I do want to just flag, not to make things more complex, is that if you do recall, several months ago, the board had resolved for exempt employees to match QP's negotiated amounts. And the reason for that is because we are trying to make sure that the entire workforce, the employee group of the CVRD is moving along at the same rate. So just if there are questions about why did we move to exempt QP versus CPI, and why are we moving the opposite direction with the board, that's simply because there was starting to become a very large deficiency or gap between QP staff and exempt staff, and it was creating compression, and so that's the reason for that.
Thank you. I'll take one more question from the room. Director Eustache.
Thank you, Chair. Director McGonigal did such a good job, I don't have much to say. I was just going to, on that, yeah, I like the idea of year 3, the existing board make the decision for year 1 of the following term. Then it kind of takes that conflict of interest and transparency for the public out of it. I like shifting from the union increases to going to CPI, and then just clarity on, just building on what Director Wilson said, the municipal directors and their local governments pay for our benefits. So there's, being that the review for salary was already done for EA directors, there's no benefits or changes being suggested in this when we look at budgetary items for the next term when these changes come into place. So our only budgetary concerns then, for clarity then, it would be municipal director change and the chair change, correct, for that? And then we may see, if we're going to CPI, we may actually see cost decreases. There isn't additional every year. And then lastly, for just reviewing the recommendations, it says there that we should look at something for the vice chair, but it's not in the recommendations. So my question is why do you feel the vice chair is not in the recommendations?
Mr. Pano?
Through the chair to Director Eustache. The reason for that is that they potentially did not have the context, HWC did not have the context that Director Wilson had mentioned, is that there was a lack of understanding as to the depth and breadth of the work that the vice chair is completing. Our understanding, which was presented to the consultants, was that essentially the vice chair was stepping in for the chair as necessary as a backfill. But beyond that, there wasn't significant amount of differential between the vice chair appointment and the regular elected official or electoral director appointment. So that's the reason why that recommendation didn't come forward.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Going online, Director Martman, please.
Thank you, Chair. And just for clarity, are we in questions or are we making extensive comments? Because it's, I'll make both if you like, but what would you prefer?
I'd like succinct questions and succinct comments for staff.
Okay. Well, I'll hold my comments for later because I'm finding these answers to the questions are relevant to where my comments will come from. So I'll get back to that later. The first question is going back to the benefit package. So my practice, or where I've been in the past, has always tried to compare the complete package that an employee or anybody receives. And so I'm at a loss about how we can even have comparatives if we aren't looking at the complete package from a numerical value. But so that's the first piece in terms of doing future reviews. Would we be looking at trying to do that or not?
Mr. Pano?
To the chair, through the chair to Director Martman. That was the goal of this assessment, was to look at total compensation overall. Unfortunately, what we found, as I mentioned earlier, is that there were very few comparators that actually provided the benefits that we provide, Comox Valley and RDN and ourselves. And so we are the outliers. We are leading the comparator group with that regard. But that's not without to say that we also shouldn't denote that there is still significant gaps in a few of the areas like the chair stipend. So moving forward, I don't disagree that we should continue to make attempts to look at total compensation because that is the true comparator, as you say. But we have to deal with the data that we're provided within the market, and that's where things fell out, unfortunately.
Follow up then, Chair?
Certainly.
Yeah, so the, and if I could, because we don't have that information in front of us, I'm making the assumption that it's about 5,000, which is about 10%. and therefore we are about 15%, therefore above, since we were 5% before, roughly 15% above if we use it as a total comparator. So that's where I'm going with, correct me if I'm wrong, but my next question is about the use of the independent task force, because that is sort of part of the process, or it is part of the process that UBCM suggests. Is that something that you see having value, or why aren't we going that route right now? Is it, or should we be deciding for the future?
Mr. Brown?
Through the chair to Director Martman, we did discuss that with HWC, as it was one of the key items in terms of how to approach remuneration around the board. As you see in the report, we've come to the conclusion that administratively, it would be difficult. In terms of timelines, it would create a significant amount of work. And as you see from the reports that were provided here, a third party, unbiased third party, impartial third party, is likely to provide equally, if not better, data from the research that they do, because this is the work that they do on a regular basis. My concern, this is my personal opinion, is the development of a task force. Not everybody's, in fact, there's very few people that are, pardon me, educated in the areas of compensation development and programs, et cetera. And you may find yourself dealing with a fairly inefficient process where you're educating first and then providing direction. That committee is actually then adept to provide the direction. So if we're looking on an every 3-year basis, my personal recommendation to the board would be to keep it third party for efficiency reasons. It is still transparent, it is still impartial.
Thank you, Mr. Pidle. I'll turn to a director in the room. Director Nicholson, please.
Thank you. Couple of questions. If municipal directors don't have the option of having benefits where they are in their municipality, are they able to opt into our, as part of the?
I would have to confirm that, but my assumption is correct, yes. They would have the option to opt into our plan.
Okay. And I am wondering about emergency management. That's one of the big things that we do. And I know that if we had a significant and prolonged emergency, it would require a lot of time by the chair and the vice chair, presumably. So do you know if any other regional districts have a bonus option if that happens?
In short, I don't know. In short, that was not a question that we had asked. There are, I mean, technically, under the eyes of the ESA, elected officials are not employees. So I would have to confirm whether or not elected officials would be eligible for remuneration under the Emergency Management Act. There could be potential for that, but I would have to look into it to confirm, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I actually didn't mean under the Emergency Management Act. I just meant that if we ended up with, like I remember we had a wildfire, and so the chair had to go to meetings every day, 7 days a week until, and it was just a small fire, right? For 3 weeks. So I wouldn't use that as but if you had like a major wildfire and we had people being evacuated and so forth, you would be on call for a long time probably. And I'm just wondering if we would consider, extra remuneration at that time. And so I'm wondering if any other regional districts do that.
Not based on our
that you know.
on our research that we've completed. We didn't look into the details of additional opportunities for remuneration. That is a good example that you bring up, Director Nicholson, but it wasn't within the scope of this project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Nicholson. I'm going to turn online again to Director Acton.
Thank you, Chair. I guess how I would have seen this report going is, so we initially did a lot of work for electoral area directors and described the role and the job, and then increased the compensation to reflect that side of of the work. But that it for us is maybe half of the work. And then now we're talking about municipal directors, but I see it as we're talking about just directors that sit on board days half of the time, which has increased significantly even in just the last 8 years that I've been on the board. And everyone gets that same amount for that board work. And municipalities directors can go and fix their compensation that is at their boards and their and figure out how they want to apply their benefits. But I'm looking at it more as like there's this half that we took care of, and now there's another half that's not taken care of. And what I keep coming back to is how much do we value our board, and how much do we want to make it accessible to all? So comparing these comparables who are all still in the dark ages, just like we are, just doesn't seem to like more, if we wanted to compare to politicians, let's compare to provincial pay and then federal pay, because we are such a large regional district. Do we expect people, like, are we providing this as a 3-hour-a-week job or 10 hours a week? Do we allow for people to have and actually have a proper employment? Then that's something else. Is this considered just a part-time thing that's almost to a volunteer basis? Then we should be saying that. This is not making any of this. Yes, the benefits are nice, but personally I have benefits through my husband, and that's why I can be here. So I can be here and take a position that is not even close to the BC living wage at $27 an hour. So I think there's nothing surprising here. I guess, can't we just be leaders? Do we need to bring everybody down with us? Can't we just provide a proper wage for, like, I've never had someone say to me, you are paid too much for what you do.
Director
Anyway,
Acton.
I'll just stop.
Thank you.
You're getting cut off, but
No,
I would just like us to say, you know what, thanks for this report, but we can do better. And we want, like, if we want, we've sat here saying, oh, we want to be leaders, we want to attract good staff. Why don't we want to attract good board members? Like, allow a teacher to take a year off, allow a lawyer to take a year off, or 4 years off. So I guess I feel like I'm always the only one talking this way, so I'll stop.
No, I don't hear a question for staff at present, but an emphatic
Okay, then
comment.
my question is, I'll put it in a question, is like, why aren't we comparing it, the electoral area directors for their work, as we did with a job position, and then now for the work with the board and how it's grown? We have regional rec, we have et cetera, and it's a full day. Like, our board days are actually bigger. And so why aren't we comparing that work to what the work we already did and grow that side of remuneration?
Thanks for the question. I don't know if Mr. Pidle can answer that, but it might lend credence to Director Morrison's recommendation, or what he was intimating, that we assess the time that we spend and do that survey again. Would that be a reasonable expectation, Mr. Pidle?
At the will of the board, we can take direction.
Okay.
What I can say in terms of comments to Director Acton's comments, is that we did our best to try and measure apples to apples. So you'll see at the back of the report, of the HWC report, we did do an assessment of obligated meetings. So that would be things like board, EASC, committee of the whole, etc. We did not include elective meetings, so that would be committees, commissions, APC, etc. And the reason for that is we wanted to try and remove as much subjectivity out of the report as possible, because we wanted to provide metrics that were as defensible as possible. So that's the reason why we went that route. I mean, there's always potential to dig deeper. It comes at a cost in terms of time and resources with the consultant, of course. And, but yeah, at the direction of the board, we're open to it.
Thank you. Turning to Director Segal, please.
Thank you very much. Great report. Thank you so much, Mr. Pidle. It was so straightforward. I really enjoyed reading it. I have a couple of questions. One regarding alternates and how when we have alternates come, basically we're paid our salary plus they're paid for the meetings. There's kind of like a double charge. I'm wondering if there's any examples of regional districts, I don't know, I guess like deducting from the salary of the director when an alternate comes?
Mr. Pino?
Oh, pardon me. Just coming off of a cold here. My apologies, you guys. We did ask HWC to look into it, and the data came up pretty much null. So we tried to find comparators that paid in the same model as we do, which is a salary model versus paid per meeting model. Obviously, in that scenario, pay per model meeting is the alternate director's double payment doesn't become an issue at that point. And there was no information that they could provide for us. But that's not to say that your suggestion isn't something that we could employ at the direction of the board or the committee. Potentially, there could be a reduction to those individuals that aren't able to show up at the same amount as the cost of the alternate stipend. The only thing that I would suggest that we consider if we were to do that is the administrative burden. And so that may end up being just as costly as the double payment itself. I mean, obviously I can't put a tangible number to that, but there would be a paper trail, there would be, payroll functions, et cetera, that would have to be managed that way. So it may end up being just kind of a moot point.
Yeah, thank you. Second question is okay. So I was just at the FCM conference and at a table of other BC elected officials and discovered some councils get a pension. And so I was really intrigued about that and just wondering if there are any regional districts that have access to a pension. I was just looking at my pay stub. I see we do get payments towards our CPP, but is that just required, I guess?
That's a requirement.
Yeah, okay, right. So, as a millennial pension I don't even know what that means. So I guess, are there examples within regional districts that provide that for elected officials?
From our cursory research, no. We did reach out to MPP to see if that was a possibility, and we could not get a straight answer. They asked that we reach out to their underwriting department to see if there was any potential or probability for us allowing our board members to become eligible for the pension. One thing to consider then too is what is the benefit to the board member, and how many of you would benefit. And so obviously MPP ceases at 65, and so those individuals that are older than 65 would not be eligible. Then we would have to determine whether or not we would provide a corresponding amount in terms of remuneration added versus pension and so forth. Once again, it boils down to administrative burden, and that's fine. I don't mean burden in the bad sense. It takes time and effort to try and implement these things, and we just need to balance the benefit to the cost. What's the return on investment for that type of initiative? You're welcome.
Thank you. Turning online to Director Morrison. Director Morrison,
Thank you, Chair.
Can you
hear me?
Can you hold on for 1 second? Somebody sitting in my seat wants a first-time opportunity.
I certainly can.
Actually, we've got two first-timers. Sorry to. So turning to Director McClinton.
Thank you, Chair. I've many comments, but I'll save them for when we are allowed to say those. There's a lot to talk about. I just want to acknowledge Director Acton. I just couldn't agree more. And I think the proof is that virtually nobody has a job other than being a director, right? So I think that sort of says, and I know many people that, or a few people that came here with another job or a part-time job or something, and they no longer have that. So I think the responsibilities this board demands says everything we need to know. And I think we've got our foot in, we're trying to pretend we're part-time, but there's no way that it is. And for me, it's not about the time, even though I'm using that word, it's about the expectations and when we're demanded to be here and when our community demands of us. So I just couldn't be more, I've bit my lip on this for 3 years. I just couldn't be more passionate about this. And if my community disagrees with me, I'm happy to hear that at the next election. My question is, before I have more to say on this, is where do directors fit in the pay scale of employees at the CVRD?
Mr. Pino?
Through the chair to Director McClinton. First off, just to clarify, as I mentioned earlier, elected officials are not considered employees. And that's just ESA. That's not me making any opinion on that at all. I would say that, our entry-level position, our generalized entry-level position on the QP side, which would be a full-time receptionist clerk, primarily working in our community services areas, is paid around $49,000 per annum. And that's based on 1,820 hours. So that's a full-time position. Okay, so that's our, I wouldn't say it's our lowest paid position, but that's our general entry-level position. And it's not our lowest because obviously we have casual staff that are doing summer programs like children's camps, et cetera, that are paid, in the $20 hour range. But that's generally where it falls for entry-level staff.
Director Manhas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just got some comments, no questions. First of all, I think municipal councils are adequately compensated. We have the option to not join the board. So I think the CPI is the way to go. That's the same sort of model we use at North Cowichan as the CPI for elected officials. MPI, I'm not high on the MPI part because MPI is generally higher than CPI. It is higher than CPI, and MPIs in my opinion is higher because of our procurement policies, and so I think CPI is a better indication across the board. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Manhas. I'm going to turn to, I think it's Director Callio. It's Director Wilson.
I've actually got comments, so I'll defer until somebody else has got questions.
Thank you, Director Wilson. I'm going back online to Director Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, I still do have questions, and I've also got some comments, but I will say I'm very much in line with what Director Acton and Director McClinton have said, especially after the discussions that I've had here at FCM. Quick question on the expenses, and I think this is an important question to understand how the calculations were made, because not all directors experience the same level of expenses, and I truly consider expenses to be expenses and not part of income, because I can't, when people are elected, their proximity to the board and our travel time and the amount of time I spend in my vehicle to attend meetings is, so can you give us, Mr. Pidle, a breakdown as to what the expenses are that are included and how that's calculated? Because I know that when the Sophie reports come out that my numbers are always highest, and generally the outlying directors' expenses are always highest as a result of where we live. So I'm wondering what the efficacy and fairness of the inclusion in the calculation for compensation is if there are those that experience high expenses and those that experience low expenses, how was that number determined for the report's purposes? That's my first question.
Through the chair to Director Morrison, what we did was we segregated expenses out, much like we did with regard to benefits. We looked at remuneration unto itself, benefits unto itself, and then expenses unto itself. What was done was a comparator of the expense policies to see where we fell. We did find that overall our expense policy was favorable in comparison to other competitors, or comparators, I should say. And obviously, as you mentioned, Director Morrison, the actual reimbursement for expenses would vary based on things like proximity and, requirements to come into the board, et cetera. And so what it was, again, doing our best to remove subjectivity and, sorry to use the analogy again, but apples to apples, it was to look at policy to policy to determine whether or not our policy itself was lagging, leading, or on market. And we found that, in fact, the terminology used in the report was favorable. And so overall, our expense reimbursement policy is more favorable than several of our comparators.
Thank you. That's helpful, but I'm not sure that it is a good indicator. Like, the policies may be favorable, but I'm not sure that the inclusion in this is an accurate reflection. My second question is, there's a piece missing in this report, and I don't know if we failed as a board to give direction, but it's been my understanding in discussions around the board for a number of years that we not only discussed what the increased role of the vice chair, the elected vice chair of the board would be, but there was definitely discussions about the added responsibilities and potential compensation, not as a per meeting, but for the committee chairs. And I know that we've been discussing this. I can't see Director Segal at the moment, but I thought there was going to be inquiries into the additional responsibilities that committee chairs would have, and that there might be a suggestion or recommendation as to those that hold those roles in the future. And so I'll stop there. Any reason why there wasn't any discussion of that or research into that?
Mr. Pidle?
Through the chair, direction was not provided by the board, at least to my knowledge. Since I've been here, I know that there had been work done in 2019. And what I had done without that direction was taken the job descriptions that were drafted in 2019, I think, by the existing board, to try and find the most reasonable and accurate representation of the work that is being completed. Now, in terms of assessments of, involvement in committees and commissions, that direction was not provided, and I did not do the work.
So perhaps, Director Morrison, we could add that as a recommendation after we've fully gone around the table. And on that note, I guess I'm going to turn to Director Segal.
Thank you, Chair. One last question. I do have a variety of motions that I'm ready to make once we're done questions. The chair stipend in the report there's a 17 point whatever difference, but the recommendation is just to increase it by 5%. I'm wondering if you can comment on that disparity.
I can, through the chair. So in the HWC report, they looked at current state, so 2025 numbers and the preceding 3 years, et cetera. Their recommendation to try and somewhat close the gap, primarily for the chair stipend, was to look at the conversion to CPI, then take, to fill the gap, the 3 years average of CPI for like 24, 23, and 22. That would primarily cover the huge influx in inflation that we experienced. I think it's 6.71% in 2022, if I'm not mistaken. But that somewhat contradicted, the intent to do an assessment 1 year prior to election for implementation after election on, say, January 1st of 2027, for example. So then what I did was I took a look at the numbers. Okay, so what are the forecasted numbers? What's the forecasted 3-year average from, say, 2027 back? And that number became so nominal that it wouldn't have any impact on closing the gap. So what I did was not arbitrarily, but took roughly the 4.74% that they suggested to close that gap, and placed it as 5% moving forward in 2027. Now, one thing to take into consideration is, so we've got about a 6% gap on the municipal director side and a roughly 17.4 or 5% gap on the chair stipend side. What you may want to do, just food for thought, is provide the conversion to CPI for everybody, for the entirety of the board. then close the municipal director's gap by adjusting, something around that 5% to bring it closer back to what market would look like. And then with regards to the chair stipend, do the same thing, 5% in the first year, but you may want to add an additional, thank you so much, Mike, may want to add an additional 5 in the second year just to further close that gap to roughly 10%. And then you still have roughly 7% gap moving forward, but, and then moving forward with CPI going on and on and on, that 7% gap would likely still remain depending on what CPI looks like. And so that might be something that the next board may want to consider taking a look at, whether or not you want to add an additional 5% bump to close that gap further. And just one more thing is, say for example, if the board provides direction to do another assessment, say 3 years' time from now, 1 year before the next election, we can do the same thing and find out where that gap looks. It may have adjusted, it may have gone up, down, stay the same, and then you guys can elect, the board can elect to make a decision based on the information at that point in time.
Thank you, Mr. Paddle, for that thorough explanation.
Thanks. Come back to me when you're ready for motions.
Okay, I'm going to turn back to the floor, Mr. Morrison, Director Morrison. Mr. Director Wilson.
Comment time, Chair, just very quickly. I'm not sure whether we could bring forward something to UBCM, and this goes back to what Director McClinton and Director Acton have said as well about remuneration from the thing. Now, one of the things that happens in the EU is that they have fairly strict guidelines as far as local government is concerned. One is that there's a 4-year term, same as ours. The second is that they are limited to 2 4-year terms, which probably wouldn't fly in this particular area here. But your job is protected. If you have a job, that is safe for the 4 or 8 years that you are elected for. You are paid at the same rate as what your job was paying you as well. If you don't have a job, then there is a set rate that you will get paid at. Now, is that something that we could be looking at, or something that could be brought forward towards UBCM to say, okay, this is what others are doing, it's a model that seems to work? Would that be something that and this is a question more for the board rather than Mr. Puddle, is that something that we could make as a resolution towards UBCM? I'm not sure.
Are you able to comment on that, Mr. Puddle?
I was not aware of the model that's being used in the EU, but job protection would definitely increase engagement in elected official capacities, right? You'd get a demographic across, hopefully, all different, diverse groups of people. And that's just based on, my own assumptions. It's the first I've heard of this, but I think it is a novel approach.
I'm going to turn to a first-time speaker, Director Callio.
Thank you. Mine's really easy. I'm just wondering why directors are not considered employees. I mean, they're receiving benefits, they're receiving remuneration, and, for example, would directors not receive the employees' rates at some of the CVRD facilities that there is across the valley?
So I can't speak to the reason as to what basis legislation was drafted against, but there is not an employee-employer relationship. So under the Employment Standards Act, the relationship would exist. Now, you're elected by the people, and so that is the premise of why elected officials aren't deemed employees under the Act itself.
So it's actually part of the Local Government Act, is that?
Employment Standards Act.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
No problem, thank you.
Going online to Director Martman.
Thank you, Chair. Interesting answers, questions. Thank you for bearing with us. I have one other question because I sense, I always get this feeling I'm in a bubble, and that we make these decisions based on information provided through staff on direction that we give. Yet, I think there's another side of the equation. When we enter into negotiations with our CVRD employees through our staff, we hold the line on what the amount will be. Staff follow and negotiate. No one's holding the line for who's paying this wage or our salary or what we get compensated for. And I feel there's missing information about that, and I don't know how we would go about doing this, because we have an environment right now that if you had someone out there holding the line, they would say that things are scarce, things are precarious. You know, and that's the piece I want to bring into the conversation right now. Well, we are looking at saying, yes, we are worth more. We should have another side saying, but the job can only pay this. So anyways, that's my question. Why don't can we bring indicators in to say, is the environment of our region collectively able to afford this? What are the markers out there that we would look for? That's the question to staff.
That's a difficult question, but Mr. Pidle, you'll try your best.
I'll try my best, yeah, through the chair to Director Martman. In terms of holding the line, I think when it comes down to no different than how staff take direction from the board in terms of mandate, the board and elected officials take direction from their constituents. So while it's not immediate, but that line is held through the vote. And whether or not there are indicators that we could make assessment to research, it's lost on me at this point in time as to how and what metrics we would apply for that reason. I don't disagree that that would be interesting information, Director Martman. I think it would be valuable information. What's lost on me is what metric would we apply and how would we apply it, and for how long would it be applicable? Because every 4-year term, I would assume that the minds of the constituents and the scarcity of resources does change.
Thank you, Mr. Pidle. So we're coming up to 1 hour of discussion. We've got 2 people in the room, 2 people online. I think Mr. Martman, Director Martman's question has been answered.
One other comment, please.
Follow up? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, it's very quickly, and it's as we move towards motions and discussing this, I would just mention to the chair that it might be, there's 2 parts to this in my mind. One is about the process and the timing, and the second one is about the numbers. And I would suggest that we split those, not combine them into one motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Martman. Okay, turning to the room, Director Istache.
Chair, that was a good segue with what you just shared. I was listening and reading the room, and I wanted to put forward a start to make some progress through motions and pick the simplest one that seems to be a consensus of, if that's okay to put forward.
If I may, I'd like to just ensure that we've allowed people time to still comment.
This is a low-hanging fruit one, just to put that out there.
And I believe Director Segal had a motion prepared, and Director Beeston has just come online. I don't know if we've had a healthy dialogue for about an hour about remuneration, and we've got 3 directors online that wish to speak, and 2 in the room, and I'm not sure. Perhaps put it out there, Director Istache.
Very simply, that we stay with a salary-based model, and that we move to CPI as the basis for adjustments of the municipal and electoral area directors' remuneration yearly.
I-
Yearly.
And I'm going to turn
I
to,
won't speak.
point of order, Director Segal, what is your point? What is your point, please?
Just noting that the motions Director Eustache is putting forward are very similar to the recommendations written in the report. I just wanted to check in with staff how they would like to, if we
I
should
was
follow.
removing the sensitivity to
What,
speak to
what I wondered, I'm seeing some negativity online from Director Morrison. Let's have a bit more conversation in the room, and then I'm going to suggest we caucus to work on a recommendation that we can bring back and discuss that. Does that
Chair,
address?
I would just request that they're questions and not comments. Let's save our comments for when the motions are on the floor.
I appreciate that. Okay, so we've finished with, how about we turn to Director Nicholson on, and then we'll go online to Directors Morrison and Acton.
I have a question thank you. I have a question about the regional district of Nanaimo. And I've noticed in the tables that they seem to be very generous compared to other regional districts on all fronts. And I'm wondering how much that kind of influences the median or whatever. And I ask that because the regional district of Nanaimo, I think, is one of the more similar areas for us to compare ourselves against. Sort of that and Comox, so I'm just wondering.
Through the chair to Director Nicholson, you're correct. In terms of the assessment that we've done, particularly the assessment as well with HWC, they found that our most relevant comparators are Comox Valley Regional District, primarily, that's the first one, and then RDN is second. In terms of how did the numbers, for lack of better terminology, impact the recommendations moving forward, it was just taken into account as the median. So not as an average, as a median, right? And so with that, we're looking at the 50th percentile, right at the top of the bell curve, no lead, no lag. And that would have likely brought us forward a little bit. But depending on, I don't have the data right in front of me, but depending on whether numbers fall, that's how it would be taken into account.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And hoping to close this question period, I'll turn to Director Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. So I have a question in regards to, and sort of planting a seed in regards to the timing of the implementation, and maybe a benefit of being here, but the specifics around the implementation, it's great for us to have a policy that we're going to target a number for the next board. The challenge is, and I've seen this happen, is the decision can be made. 2026 budget is embarked upon. The increase or the new amounts are considered in the 2026 budget, and pardon me, 2027 budget. Then the election is held. There's a new board. There's a recommendation to set remuneration at a certain level. And then the realities of approving that budget happen. And there is, I have witnessed a pullback from much hard work and recommendations for remuneration, pulled back on the basis of a new board not knowing all of the information that's gone into it. So my question for staff is, do you see a drawback in the new rates being implemented in the 4th year of the term, so that they set and pardon me, but baked into the budget, like already considered in the budget, so that doesn't have to be a whole new renegotiation of the remuneration by a brand new board?
Through the chair to Director Morrison. The primary reason why the recommendation is made to implement, the first of the new elected year or the new term, is to mitigate the perception of conflict from the public to the board. And so essentially what you're doing is mitigating that concern. In terms of administration, et cetera, like administrative burden, et cetera, there's no drawback from that perspective. The staff would take direction from the board as they see fit, and you are correct that it would always come, or could come up under discussion during budget time, as can any pay, any resource allocation, et cetera. So in short, Director Morrison, sorry for the long-winded answer, the major drawback is perceived conflict of interest.
Thank you, Director.
And just as a quick follow-up, has there been any work done on the remuneration of elected officials at the CVRD in relation to the living wage amount that has been determined for the Cowichan Valley?
Through the chair to Director Morrison, no, there has not. That wasn't taken into consideration, primarily because of the reason, again, because elected officials are not deemed as employees. Living wage is intended to be applied to employees. Not to say that there isn't a strong nexus between the two, but we had to draw the line in terms of the scope of the report somewhere. And we could expand this report as far as we wanted, but we wanted to make sure it was concise, relevant, and as objective as possible. Objective as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Pidle. I beg your indulgence. We have a first-time speaker in Director Tatum from the Lake.
Thank you, Chair. I've been biting my tongue here for the last hour because one of the biggest questions I have about this thing is how much the consultant was paid to write this report. And I know it's a sensitive topic, and I understand how, it's something that maybe can't be done within, but I'm just curious if I could get an answer on that, and then I've got another question after that.
Through to the board, or through to, Director Tatum. The HWC is actually quite reasonable in terms of their costs. I've used them a couple of times for that very reason, plus they provide great work. Now, the cost overall, the first bill was $4,400, if I'm not mistaken, 44 to 48, if I'm not mistaken, and then the second one was 15 plus tax, 1,500. And so, yeah, it was reasonable in terms of an overall compensation review. I've seen compensation reviews come in around 35 is the norm, depending on the size of the employee group. Now, obviously, really, there's only 3 or 4 positions that we have to assess for the board, so that does bring down the cost of the review significantly. But I would say that if we were to employ our resources in-house, it probably wouldn't be far off that amount if you look at the wages of my staff and the amount of work that they would have had to put in. And the fact that they, and this is no disrespect to my staff, but because they don't do it regularly, they wouldn't have access to the same resources. So this is probably the most cost-effective way to go about it.
Thank you, Mr. Prada. And a follow-up?
Yeah, I think that's a very reasonable amount based upon having some distance from the board, and for that amount of money, I feared it was a lot more. So I'm grateful that it seems like quite a reasonable amount. The other question I had is that I'm sure that every board, council in the province goes through this discussion, if not formally, informally, continually. Is there a role here for the UBCM to try and provide some overall structure or process for people to do that, to take a look at where they stand?
Through the chair to Director Tappan. They have, actually, and a lot of the work they have done was the foundation for the report that was created by HWC. I think their report came out in, if I'm not mistaken, don't quote me on this, but it was 2019, 2020, and it was an attachment to the report I provided, which essentially lays out best practices and guidelines for board remuneration, council remuneration across British Columbia. So they have done some significant research and work in trying to provide tools for boards to employ to help solve these problems, because obviously they'd seen that it was an issue that many boards and councils were grappling with. So overall, as you're probably well aware, the EBCM provides a lot of really positive tools, and this is the one that we thought we looked at. Thought it was great. We wanted to make sure it was employed in terms of the foundation of the BC report.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank the board for a healthy dialogue, and I'm going to suggest we take a recess of 15 minutes, and I'm going to turn to Director Segal, Chair Segal, to perhaps confer off-site with Mr. Pidle, and we'll work on a recommendation and come back at 5 minutes to 11, please.
Comparing the workload between our two areas, it's not the same. We got 2,400 people. We're rural. We don't have much development. You see how many development things come in front of us? Like very little, you know, just in that alone, land use is different. And then when you throw short-term rentals in, yeah, I've got a bit of angst around that, but you've got a lot of angst. Like, it's just the things that where work and hours are created. Yeah, and then we get paid, we get compensated the same, you know, it's, yeah. But then I drive an hour every each way.
Yeah, and your community deserves, like in your case,
We're back live. I don't know whether we have the recommendation. We took a bit longer to caucus to work on a motion, which I believe Director Segal is going to move. But we're waiting.
So that you can see the whole thing.
Our corporate secretary is going to put it up on screen. Can everybody see that?
Suggest we sever these individually.
Thanks, Patrick. Mr. Pidle, there's a question in the chat about which function covers the cost of directors' remuneration. That would be a question for finance, and they're not present at present. So I'm sure it's a matter that could be answered in due course.
Thank you, Clayton.
It's been moved by Director Segal, all 8 in front, seconded by Director Estache. And sorry, did you want to move all 8 or do you want to move one at a time?
I want to move all 8, but we will vote on them.
Oh, okay, so Director Segal is suggesting that we will vote on each item individually. So perhaps we could, unless there's comment on item, comment or input on, sorry? Okay, I'll defer to.
Before Patrick reads it, can I make a correction or a comment?
Please go ahead.
Just for clarity, it says vice chair stipend and chair stipend. Should that not read board vice chair and board chair?
Thank you for that clarity, yes.
Which number is that?
Item
Number 3 and 5.
It's board chair and board vice chair. Thank you, Mr. Robbins. Thank you, Director Wilson. So, If there's no discussion about item 1, I call for a question on.
Point of order.
Sorry. Oh, man. Hold on, Kate. There you go.
Thank you, Chair. I just request that our corporate officer read out the motions one at a time, and you call for comment, discussion, debate prior to voting on each one individually.
Thank you, Director Scal and Director McClinton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm going to have a difficult time supporting most of these, which I'll when it gets to the appropriate time, when I have a concern, I'll speak to it at that point. I didn't know if we are going to talk about them all at once, so I am fine with number 1.
So turning to our corporate secretary, could you please read out item 1?
Thank you, Chair. The first motion for consideration that the CVRD maintain a salary-based remuneration model inclusive of meeting attendance.
Comment, question, input? Looking around the room. Director Marchman.
Thank you. So a salary indicates that it's one pay scale for one job. So why is the words inclusive of meeting attendance? If you don't attend a meeting, you don't get a salary, or like what's the? I don't understand the addition of that last 3 4 words.
Mr. Pidle's going to reply.
Through the chair to Director Martman, the indication of the second part of that statement is just to signify that there will not be a per meeting stipend.
Does that satisfy your query?
Isn't that what salary base means?
You are correct. It's just adding additional clarity.
Okay. Yeah, I find it redundant. It's okay.
Are we ready for the question? Oh, okay. Starting with Director Morrison online.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if it's being remote, but I'm in complete agreement with Director Martman. The words inclusive of meeting attendance is not clarifying, it's confusing. I would suggest that this number 1 end after model with a period.
We'll need an amendment, motion to amend that then?
I would move that it be amended.
Seconder by McClinton, Director McClinton. All in favor of the amendment? Carried. And turning back to the revised amended motion, are there any more? Oh, we've got Director Acton, or were you finished, Director Morrison, on?
Correct, yes.
So Director Acton about item 1.
Yes, thank you. I don't even think we should be voting on any of these right now. We did not come to any kind of consensus on even what kind of model we should be following. This is just landing us where this report has indicated based on, I did not hear a lot of appreciation for what we were compared to, like other regional districts. Why are we the mean? I think at this point, we should be sending this all back to staff for more work, not just adopting this 5%. And maybe we need some guiding principles of like, why do we even care? Because here we are, we're just gonna continue as usual, adopting something that does not, like, why don't we ask ourselves, why do we even want a compensation? If it's just gonna be volunteer, let's just make it volunteer. Or what are our goals with trying to remunerate board members? So I think that this is totally premature, and so if in doubt, just put me as opposed to any of these, and I think we should be referring this back and doing this properly. It's quite an insult to the position, and even offline, Director Martman and myself were talking, like, we have different areas. Maybe we need to look at what each role does if somebody has a larger area. But how can we encourage? Like, I would like to encourage different demographics on our board, and this doesn't do that. So I think we're just continuing with the same old. That's not going to help us in any way.
Thank you for your input, Director Acton, and you're eligible to vote in due course. Is there any more comment on item 1? Hearing none, I call for a question. All in favor? Opposed? We have 2 opposed, 3 opposed, no, 2 opposed in Acton. Director Morrison opposed. So 2 opposed, carried. Moving on to, would you read item 2, Mr. Robbins?
The second motion for consideration that electoral area director remuneration be adjusted annually based on the previous year's Victoria, BC Consumer Price Index effective January 1 each year.
And I see Director McClinton. Hit the wrong button again. There you go, Director.
Just confirming, this has been moved and seconded? Yeah, okay. And this, I've been saving my comments, so just bear with me. I think this is one where it applies the most, especially since I'm an area director. What I have the biggest problem with is that we are trying to please 2 masters and neither is being pleased. Either this is a part-time job and we treat it as such where everybody can go to their full-time job or whatever their company they run, or they don't, right? And I don't actually care which way it goes. Whatever the rest of the people on the board think. You know, my suspicion is this is an all-encompassing position and demands our full attention and our ability to be here with a clear mind. But as I said earlier, nobody, I mean, there's a couple people that own a business, but nobody else does anything other than be a director, especially the electoral area directors. I know when I came to this position, I had 2 businesses. I divested from one. I put in as much time into this position as I do into my business. I am missing a meeting with a client today, my most important client, who could only meet at 9:30, my most valuable client, so that I could come and speak about this. You know, it's either, for me, we're meeting in the evenings, and I brought this up at the very beginning, and haven't said anything about it in 3 years.
Your point, Director Segal?
I'd just ask that the director make comments to the motion on the table. Scheduled discussions are for another time.
I think I'm building context, and I just appreciate a little flexibility on this. So this motion isn't solving that problem. It's if we want, either we want people that can come to this table and do it in a full-time capacity, or we don't. And so I just can't support this. This seems very arbitrary to me, and you know, I'll maybe wait to the end to make another recommendation. But I think we need to hire a consultant to come in and to help us sort this out. So I can't support this, even though I think it's somewhat moving in the right direction. I mean, we are not getting at the fundamental issue about how we do this job, and this motion doesn't solve that.
Thank you, Director McClinton. Turning online to Director Marchman.
Thank you, Chair. And with all respect to all the members here and their positions, I'm going to offer one that might be, as I think someone once told me, contrarian, but I want to put out that these are difficult times, economic times. Families struggle to keep up with rising costs. Local businesses are cutting back. Governments are asking departments and services to tighten or they freeze salaries, freeze travel. And raising any salary at this time is sending the wrong message. And I guess it's perception of things I think maybe Director Acton was mentioning this. You know, elected office, in my perspective, is a position of public trust. And I didn't expect to get rich off of this. And it is hard because I know getting rich versus just making ends meet is two different things for different, you know, for different people. But, you know, when they ask, my community is being asked to do more with less. They just got a $300 increase in cost to them through curbside collection. They're foregoing wage increases. Budgets are stretched, you know, sometimes to the limit. And I guess I feel my type of style of leadership is by example. And so refusing any wage increase, even CPI, during hard times reinforces that we're in this all together. It maintains public confidence and sends a clear signal that leadership is about responsibility and not about privilege. And moreover, fiscal restraint at the top does preserve resources for where they're most needed. Our water, our sewer, all our services, our infrastructure, the staff, and programs to support vulnerable residents. You know, even a few $1,000s saved in compensation may seem minor, but symbolically, and that's the piece I'm really going from, it speaks volume. And I think now's the time, more than any other time, like they're talking, this is a generational time to demonstrate solidarity, humility, and prudence. And from my perspective, this is the kind of leadership that I want to demonstrate to my community. And so I would suggest that, yes, you know, even matching to CPI may be palatable, but I think we can demonstrate something powerful by saying we're not going to go with CPI this year or next year, and we'll leave that decision for the future. So I can't vote for any kind of increase, and again, all due respect to all other positions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Martman. Turning to the room, Director Stash.
Thank you, Chair. Just real quick, just to support what Director McClinton said, but I just think that commentary is best suited for item number 6. Likewise, I had to hire someone I had the privilege that I was able to hire someone to be able to be elected because I have a small business and they're there. Real quick to Director Martman's comments, which I still believe I should be speaking to those on number 6, but I'll real quickly say that every year the provincial wage goes up. I'm paying all my employees more starting in June. It's not symbolism, it's the right thing to do. And I think that's, while we aren't in the proper sense termed employees, we need to have that the public respects us as employees, and you're only going to get the quality employee that you're willing to pay for. So that goes to what Director McClinton said. I think we can easily vote on number 2. Just wanted to make that point, but also, again, my staff could care less of the symbolism. They looked at me when the Cowichan living wage came out last year and it was increased, so I increased more than the minimum wage increase, and I increased it based on the living wages. Because again, you only get the people that will step forward. This isn't a volunteer job, to say what Director Atkin said. We're going to continue, and I'm going to use the word privileged people that either have the resources, the time, or family supports to allow them to be in an elected position to do that job. We need everyday people that make up the diverse reality of our communities, that they can step away and commit to making a difference here. Those are best suited for item number 6 and through our motions, not for number 2. And at the bare minimum we can do for elected officials is tie things to CPI. I am full support of item number 2.
Thank you, Director Stash. Turning to Director Nicholson, and I do see you online, Director Morrison and Martman.
Thank you. I would like to amend this motion to say that board members' remuneration be adjusted annually. Because I recognize that they've got the CPI issue built into a couple of the other parts of the motion, but I don't think that's helpful for when we want to actually discuss what those, so I think it would streamline it if we just dealt with the CPI and got it out of the rest of the thing.
Is there a seconder that? Go ahead.
That's okay. I just have a comment. Also, I would like you to move 6 up to after 2 because it's a process one. The other ones are different issues.
That sounds, first of all, do we have a seconder for the item 2, adding board directors? Moved by Director Estache. Oh. You're not on.
Just on process, I guess, well, we can adjust number 4 when we get to it. It's in number 4, so I guess at that time, we'll just strike the CPI portion of that, and we're just moving it up to number 2. And I'm supportive of, I will second and support the change, just making note that it was in 4, and we'll just have to do that housekeeping at that time.
Mr. Robbins is making the change. And all in favor?
Speak to amendment?
Yes, Director Martman.
Maybe others, I don't mind jump the queue here, but I will speak to the amendment.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. Yeah, my comment is that it just changed the voting on this from electoral areas to all the board. Is that correct? Or was it all directors before?
It was implicit that it was all directors. We missed it. Well,
The voting of it on this item 2, would this have been an electoral area director only vote? Or would it have been all the board? That's the question.
we're talking remuneration at the governance committee. It is all directors. All 16 of us are voting on this item.
May I challenge the chair on that? Because this is electoral area director remuneration. And therefore, why would a municipal director be voting on it? Unless this is to the amendment. You've changed it from being electoral area. Have you changed the voting is the question.
I believe we have not changed the voting. I believe we're trying to come up with a motion to go before the board of directors from the governance committee that reflects the intentions of what has already been studied by a consultant. And it's come back that all EA directors are a little bit ahead of comparables. But the clarification that Director Nicholson has brought forth just adds clarity that all board director remuneration be based on CPI. And then
Sorry, I may not be clear, Chair. My question is really to legislative services. Is item 2, prior to the amendment, solely an electoral area director vote? Because it only comes from the electoral area budget.
Mr. Robbins.
Mr. Chair, you're in committee, 1 director, 1 vote. Just for clarity as well, if these recommendations go up to the board, then the board, it'll be a corporate weighted vote as it is a financial matter. And so unfortunately, your procedure bylaw nor the legislation supports that, differentiates that this is only affects electoral areas. And so unfortunately, you do not, you are not the only directors that vote on this.
And I guess so. If you bear with me, the reason I'm asking this, if we keep the motion as is, and it went to the board, my understanding that that's a financial item, but you're saying that that would be voted on by the entire board, even though it's only out of the electoral area function. That's what I'm trying to clarify.
Yes, Mr. Chair, that is correct. And it would be a weighted vote at the board.
At the board. Thank you. That was my clarification.
Thank you. Are we, your point, Director, oh man. So, there you go.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to recognize that you were challenged, and I would like you to call for, shall the chair be sustained? Call that vote.
Shall the chair be sustained? That all in favor? Thank you, Director Segal, for the tutelage. Okay, so are we ready for the vote on item 2, which Oh. On, are we, can we vote on the amendment or I don't know what waiving means, Director Morrison. Hello.
I'm patiently waiting to address the amendment.
Go ahead, please, Director Morrison.
Thank you. I have very much to say, but I want to go to process. I am incredibly uncomfortable with addressing all of these items. None of these recommendations were published in advance. This is Governance Committee, and we had a 4 direction. And I'm really uncomfortable voting on any of these items because they haven't been published. We haven't considered them. We considered a report. I was assuming the direction that we would
We've
be
had
given.
Director Morrison, we have a point of order. Director Segal.
Thank you, Chair. Most of these recommendations were published in the analysis section of the report. And I will take ownership over adding the vice chair stipend number 3.
And may I continue?
I'm going to rule your, I'm going to support Director Segal that the report carried everything but the stipend for vice chair. So I believe staff felt that it was for discussion, but out of discussion, we were going to come up with a recommendation. This committee was going to make a recommendation to the board. So when it comes time to the stipend for vice chair, would be an opportunity for this committee to vote in favor or not.
Is a referral motion in order at any time?
Yes?
I would like to refer this subject to the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting as a new business item for this afternoon.
All 8 or just the...
Yes, the entire package.
Is there a seconder for the referral motion? Director McClinton. Any further input, comment? Director Segal.
Thank you, Chair. I will not be supporting this. I think this is meant for discussion in the Governance Committee as part of our terms of reference, and I don't think it's fair to refer to a same-day agenda.
And I would suggest that municipal directors have taken time out of their busy days to be here for this discussion at the governance, so I concur with Director Segal. Turning to Director Nicholson.
Yes, I think I'll be voting against that referral motion. I think that there was pretty much consensus around the table on the process pieces at least, so I'd like to deal with that so we can move on to the other more important issues.
Thank you, Director Nicholson. And Director McGonigal.
Thank you very much. I can't support the referral motion at this time, given that we have all been appointed to the Governance Committee to make that discussion and decision at this committee to bring forward to the board. By removing municipal directors from the process of the ASC referral would negate the terms of reference of the Governance Committee.
And I see your hand still up, Director Morrison.
No.
Ready for the question on the referral motion. All in favor? Against? Against would be Abbott, McGonigal, Istache, Callio, Wilson, Segal, McClinton, Tatum, and Nicholson, and I see no against online. Director Beeston, were you against? Okay, motion fails. Back to the amended motion, the amended on item 2. Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? I see Directors Morrison and Martman opposed. Motion passes. Moving on. Oh, now on the main motion as amended, all in favor?
Excuse me, Chair.
Oh, and we've got, sorry, a question from Mr. Martin, Director Martman.
Thank you. Speaking to the main motion, could you clarify what effective January 1st each year means? Does this mean going back to a certain point or going ahead to a certain point?
I believe it means going ahead.
It doesn't say that, Chair.
Effective subsequent January?
Doesn't say retroactive
No.
either.
No.
It's not retroactive. No.
I'm going to turn to staff. Can we address the director's observation? Mr. Pidal, please.
Through the chair to Director Martman, the intent of the language is that if you look down to, I think it's item 8, that the bylaw be effective January 1st of 2027, meaning that the revised bylaw remuneration direction provided would be effective the commencement of the new term, and the remuneration would take effect January 1st of each year of that term. That's the intent of the language anyway.
May I follow up?
Go ahead, Director Martman.
I would suggest you table this one and move number 8 up.
This is a motion in its entirety, and we're going through for the benefit of the directors to debate each one. But as the report and now articulated by this motion, this is all 8 items going forth before the board that it need not be tabled. I think, Director Martman, we run the risk that we'll be discussing, this will get to the point where we'll be on a summer recess if we don't proceed. And while you make some valid points, not all of them have been accepted by other directors around the table. I think it's time to move on and perhaps not try to wordsmith this on the fly. We're at 11:40. We still have one more item on the governance agenda, and I'd like to get through this motion, please.
Yeah, if make a comment, please. With all due respect, this was brought onto the table at 11. For the record, I'd like to note that this was brought onto the table about 11:15. This is the first time I've seen it, and as if you are taking them in order, as we have said, then subject to number 8 passing means number 2 passes.
Excuse me, I'm going to interrupt Director Martman. It was under communication considerations, page 5 of 6 of the report, which we've had a week to digest. This is parlaying what was in staff's report into a more concise recommendation for the board. I think the question of leaving the CUPE system and going to the CPI was well articulated by Mr. Pidal, and this is just clarifying it in a clear motion to go before the board. So if there's no further discussion, I'm going to call the question on item, what is it? Item 2. All in favor of the amended solution? Against? Directors Martman, Morrison, and Acton. Anybody in the room? And McClinton. Motion, that portion of the motion passes. Turning to the corporate officer to read out the third point. We're going to renumber at the behest. We're going to renumber 6 is going to become number 3.
Doing great, Chair.
Dankeschön.
Hang in there. Hang in there.
Just bear with me here. It's just the auto formatting.
Does that please Director Nicholson? Okay.
And with that, Mr. Chair, the third motion, that remuneration rates be reviewed once per term by an external party, with each review to include a comparative analysis of remuneration for elected officials at similar regional districts, the the specifics of which will be determined at the direction of the board, and that reviews be initiated no later than 1 year prior to the next election.
Director Segal, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the one where we take into consideration the direction for this to come forward didn't include workload, expectation, number of hours worked, and it could be a variety of other data points to analyze to inform our remuneration. So we want to put this recommendation into future analyses so that we can really have a broad view of what this job is and what it should, how we want compensation to look like. And I've heard around the room that this is important, so I'll be supporting this.
Thank you, Chair. Director McClinton.
I may need some support, possibly from the fellow directors, just to maybe amend this. But it's the time that we are at this table, like the time of the day, is intricately tied to the compensation, in my opinion, because it whether you're taking up working hours or not taking up working hours, I mean, they're just inexplicably linked. And so if we can work that into this, I could support it. And I would also like to see that there is some mechanism for individual directors to be consulted. You know, I just don't want this entirely at arm's length. And my thinking is we need to own this decision as a board table. I don't really care what that report says, to be honest. Like, we need to own this. We know what this job entails, and we need to be able to go to our community and say it. So if those two things can somehow be worked in here, I can support it. Otherwise, I won't be. And I'm trying not to do this on the fly, so maybe I'll let some other people discuss it.
Thank you, Director McClinton. And Director Eustache.
Hi, Chair. That's a good idea. Is that, would the wording in that be that it'd say that I think I can't remember what the discussion the EA directors had with their remuneration, but is it more like reviewing the job description and at the time, like, is that kind of what you're, I guess I'm asking Director McClinton, I guess, just to clarify. So I think that would be a good idea, is like to really define the role, the job description, the
if I may.
And does it say we have, how do we ask that we have like a survey? Is that, I'm supportive of where he's going with it.
I almost
It's
would
just
suggest
vague.
that this is a topic that should be discussed by the governance committee separately. We all went into this election knowing what the parameters were. Going into the next election, if the will of this body is to meet in the evening, and we've had it healthily debated by the governance committee, the next people putting their name in the hat, in the ring, know what they're going into. But to incorporate that into this remuneration policy, I think is not the right vehicle. Now, I can stand to be corrected. I'll turn to and Director Eustache wants to follow up. Go ahead.
Am I on the list, Chair? Sorry, I might have to leave in a moment, so.
Okay, you're next up, Director Atkin.
Yeah, I guess my follow-up is like, but the remuneration rates are tied to scope. So that could be timing or expectations. So it just doesn't say it in 3, and I know we don't get to it. And even in number 3, it says that these should be reviewed at a governance committee, reflecting time of day and scope of workload. It's missing that little piece that I think does deserve the attention that Director McClinton has brought. So.
Okay.
And I do think the governance committee is the right place to do that.
I'm going to turn to Director Acton online.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, it's a really important call I'm waiting for. I agree with all those comments, and this one I think should be referred back to the governance committee for more work. So if I have a seconder on that, and I would like to explain why, not only for those reasons, but also for other reasons. We haven't defined maybe we need to go back to the drawing board and understand what are we remunerating for, and how should we look at it? What kind of like guiding principles do we have? Like this actually, and the time, so the timing is not right as well. 1 year before the election, that becomes an election issue. And then it's not in the budget. This was already brought up, and this we went through before. It was set by a previous board, and then we came back, and it took 2-3 years to get it back to where it was. So this isn't something that we should be making election issues out of. If we actually send this back and do the proper work, and this is the work that I thought we were gonna do. So I have a referral motion to send number 3 back to our governance committee so that we can actually define it further and actually do some better work for our future generations.
I see a seconder from Director McClinton for this referral motion. Discussion. Director Segal. Hold on, where are you? There you are.
Thank you, Chair. I will not be supporting this referral motion. The specific wording within this motion, the specifics determined at the direction of the board. I think that's really important for this committee to consider. This motion gives the direction for this future analysis to come to the board for us to give the specifics of how that analysis should be done. That will happen. We're too late right now. If we delay this anymore, this will become an election issue because we will be debating it in the lead up to the election. Now is the time for this conversation, and we are setting the direction for us, or for the future board, to bring the specifics that are important to them in the next analysis.
Thank you, Director Segal. I'm going to turn to, I see your hand, Director Morrison, but Director Callio. Is it Callio or is it Wilson? It's Director Wilson.
You know, for the last 7 years, I've been saying, I'm looking at agendas and saying this should be a short meeting. That's not a very smart thing to do, and you'd think after 7 years I would have changed by now, wouldn't you? Well, old dogs and all the rest of it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is there not a job description and roles and responsibilities for electoral area directors already? Yes, there is. I know there is. And yet we're still discussing whether we should have one. We've got one. The second thing is, and I'll be quite blunt about this, we made a choice. We made a choice to run. We knew what we were running for. And 3 hours later, we're still discussing what we should be doing. No
Okay.
question?
Director Morrison.
May I pose a question to staff on the report in regards to this?
You may. We're in a
Was
referral.
the-
Sorry, Ian, or Director Morrison, we at present, we have a referral motion on the floor. Is that a comment about the referral motion?
No.
So let's call it, Director McClinton, do we? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I knew what I was running for, and I'm debate.
Let's not.
I'm, and this is the time to talk about this issue. We haven't talked about it for 3 years, so I think it needs to be referred. This needs to get sorted out.
Thank you. Director Nicholson. Delegates, discussion, Nicholson. Director Nicholson.
I will be voting against a referral. I think that this, number 3, I agree with Director Segal that this is about process. It's about putting in place a bylaw that will require each term a review be done, and the board can set the terms of that review. Perhaps we could add some wording, as Director Eustache suggested, or about what, analysis of remuneration in a broad sense, scopes and so forth. But actually, this is just a process thing. But I do agree that there needs to be a referral after this one to spend a little bit more time talking about expectations and the issues that Director McClinton brought up, and where we want to go with how we manage the board and people's jobs around here. And I would like to see that evolve. I think we're moving in the right direction now, but I think compensation, remuneration is very much tied to that. And so we need to have a more fulsome discussion, I think, about it, and probably some more information from staff to inform that discussion. So I will be voting against the referral.
Thank you,
for this
Director Nicholson. And I see two online, the mover of the referral, Director Acton and Director
Yeah,
Morrison.
could I go first? Point
Yeah.
of clarity, my referral motion does not negate any other motions going forward. It is to actually have those discussions sooner than later, to continue this discussion, because I don't believe that this committee has done enough work on it. So that's exactly what referring this does. Can I have some clarity, please?
Mr. Pidle's coming back to the podium.
So the intent of the inclusion of the language around, the specifics to be determined at the direction of the board is for that very reason. To the comments of Director Segal and Director Nicholson, this is setting a process. The intent is that every 3-year period, 4-year period, the board then can look at the variables that may exist in the market, the position, and provide an accurate understanding of the duties, functions, hours worked, etc., that need to be taken into account for that preceding year's remuneration review. That's the intent of the direction language, to ensure that the board continues to have the authority and the power to set what is necessary in terms of the variables to analyze at that given point in time. If we narrow it down too much, if we're too specific in this recommendation or in the bylaw, we risk becoming out of date in terms of what analysis we're doing. Because the market will evolve, compensation structures and best practice will evolve, and we want to make sure that we evolve with it, therefore allowing the board to provide that direction at that point in time.
Thank you, Mr. Pidle.
Point of order, that did not answer the question.
We don't think that's a point of order, point of privilege, perhaps, but I think Mr. Pidle has answered it satisfactorily from my perspective.
Can I reiterate then? I asked about if, by referring this one only, this does not negate any of the other motions. It just allows us to work it further.
I think Director Segal summarized clearly what we're trying to do today, and reiterated by Directors Wilson. So I'm going to move and ask if Director Morrison has another comment about the referral.
I have a question for staff when the referral question has been settled.
Okay. Do you want to take your hand down, please? And turning to Director Estache.
Very quickly, Chair, thank you. Just thank you to Director Segal. And now with the following question that Director Atkin posed that we got from Mr. Pauly was that it answered my question. I don't think there needs to be any wordsmithing because reading the specifics of which actually accomplish that. So thank you for that. Just for clarity, that the motion of referral is actually being accomplished by the final sentence, is it not? That reviews be initiated no later than 1 year prior to the next election. So by approving what is written in number 3 means immediately this is probably coming to the governance, an upcoming governance committee prior to the end of this term, and that will be being accomplished. So we don't need to make a motion for referral. We just need to all be in favor of number 3 because it's coming straight back to the committee, correct?
That would be my interpretation. Thank you.
So we accomplish it then by voting for this.
Sorry.
I won't be voting to support
The referral.
the referral.
Okay. Staff's going to get just a bit of clarity on the timing.
Just to provide clarification, that this would take effect for the next review, right? So basically, that's correct, yeah, for next term. Thank you.
Point of clarity, this will come up for
Fall-
discussion in this term?
Follow-up, Chair? on the new information then. By doing number 3 and saying that no later, we can have that discussion because it does meet the intention of number 8. We would be discussing so that new remuneration is effective in 2027. We're not trying to accomplish anything in 2026. Number 3, that reviews be initiated no later than 1 year prior to the next election. We don't need the referral because we can have that by voting for number 3. And then we can have that remuneration discussion, and it still follows the intent of motion number 8, because even if we have that discussion and come up with the new terms of reference or that discussion that Director McClinton wants and that is valid, is accomplished again in the final part of number 3 and meets, if there is board consensus and approval, for number 8. So this, I know what you're saying, that it doesn't say in there that we can't have the discussion prior to then, it just wouldn't be implemented to then. So I don't know, just my interpretation is 3 is that we would be having the discussion that the concerned board members want sooner than later.
Okay.
That's my intent of it, Chair. I got
I think we got that.
clarification, but I just want to see.
I'm going to turn to Director Tatum in the room.
Thank you, Chair. I won't be supporting referral of this. It seems to me that referral is used way too often and it slows everything down considerably. The other thing that I'm wondering about in 3 is when we do a comparative analysis of remuneration, is it implied that that also refers to or looks at the job description?
Okay. Thank you, Director. Turning to Director Segal.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully this is the last. Just for clarity, this job we do is hard, but to be clear, we gave direction for this remuneration discussion to happen. Staff took that direction, hired a consultant, got the report that's attached to our today's report, and here we are. Hindsight is 2020. Yeah, we should have said we want more information on the workload, the hours, all of these things, but we didn't give that direction then. So now we're being smart and giving the direction for the next round of analysis.
Thank you, Director Segal. Are we ready to vote on the referral motion? All in favor? Against? Against would be Directors Segal, Wilson, Callio, Eustache, McGonigal, Abbott, Nicholson, Tatum, Manhas. Motion to refer fails. Voting on item 3, all in favor? Against? Against would be McClinton, Acton, Morrison. That's it. Item 3 passes. Mr. Robbins.
For next consideration, that a board vice chair stipend of $7,750 be added, effective January 1 each year.
Mr. Chair, can I ask that question of staff that I've been patiently waiting to pose?
You certainly may. Thank you for your patience.
My question to staff is, in the analysis of the board meetings that we have and the data around 200 meetings, was there an analysis done of the time of day of meetings that we do in our 200 meetings versus our comparator groups? It's such a critical function or critical piece of information for this compensation consideration.
Through Chair Abbott to Director Morrison, the analysis was done purely on hour for hour, not time of day. We were looking to try and ensure that we looked at hours. In terms of when you work, I understand that it can impact directors of the board differently in different scenarios, but that was not taken into account.
Follow up, Director Morrison?
So just as a follow-up, we don't know of our comparator groups if their meetings are all daytime or all evening or a mix. Is that what I'm hearing?
It was not within the scope of the report, no. We did not inquire. We looked to try and measure apples to apples based on hour to hour, not in terms of time of day.
Thank you. That concludes your input. Okay, Mr. Director Morrison. And I'm turning now to discussion on item 4, Director Segal.
Thank you. I put this one forward because now that I see the workload of the chair, I really need to lean heavily on the vice chair, and that should be compensated. Right now, I feel bad. I know that Director McGonigal is incredibly supportive on a volunteer basis, but I really think the amount that I do should be compensated.
Thank you, Director Segal. I'm going to turn to Director Acton on item 4. You're muted, Director Acton.
Thank you. I have a bit of issue with number 4. I think it's something that we should be discussing separately and further. I've been the vice chair 3 times. And I can't say that the workload was really that much more to that amount. And so perhaps it depends on the chair, but the chairs that I was underneath, and every time we did talk about trying to kind of co-chair and give some delegations to the vice chair, and those things simply did not happen. And I think we've had this discussion many times. It didn't happen because of the legislation, not because of the will. So compensating it, I think it's quite high. We should be having this as with further analysis and actually some definition of what the vice chair ends up doing and how we're compensating it, because, you know, as I've said, anyway, I can say it anyway, it just doesn't seem right, and especially with not any solid information backing it up. This is something we should be looking at next time, not this time.
Okay, we hear you. I'm going to turn to Director McGonigal and Vice Chair.
Thank you, and I'm not speaking as the current vice chair. I'm just speaking to the role of the vice chair, which has morphed significantly in the past number of boards, from an attendance in absence to a co-governing model, so to speak. Whether it's looking at this, agenda reviews, other aspects of board business, it is not strictly the board chair that discusses those presently. It's a matter of senior management team, the chair, the vice chair, the committee chairs. It has morphed into a co-chair function that is uneligible for that designation due to the legislation. And as vice chair, I know that I've been called upon a number of times for input on various subjects from the chair, and I gladly do that within my municipal stipend. But for future chairs and vice chairs, I think it's important that the people willing to do the work be compensated for the work that they're doing. It has changed significantly, as we all know from the number of years that we have been here. The workload has changed. Whether you add on new functions, et cetera, that workload has to be spread. The chair cannot do everything, and the vice chair is there in a supportive role.
Thank you, Director McGonigal. Going online to Director Martman, please.
Thank you, Chair. And you know, when we have a concept of adding something that we haven't done before, do we have the right supports in place that will detail what this reimbursement entails? Or is this just a one-off line and we have nothing behind it? Do we have a policy or anything in place that says, based on this is what the board chair will be doing?
I do not know, but I'm looking to staff. Mr. Pidle.
Pardon me. Through the chair to Director Martman, there is an existing position description for the vice chair role. We may want to look at that because I think it was written back in 2019, 2020 to ensure that it's in a fair understanding of what the role and duties exactly kind of entail. The 7750 is based on the fact that that is the median amount that vice chairs are provided across the comparators.
which was in your report. Thank you, Mr. Pidle. Okay, turning to the room.
May I have a follow-up there? Then?
Okay.
So do we have the job description from the other areas on what they expect of their vice chair?
Many of which don't have job descriptions, some of which do. We tried to compare as best we could to understand, the depth, breadth of the functions and duties of each position. But no dissimilar than, prior 2020 for the CBRD, many don't have that information, and it is just the work of the board.
Thank you. Okay, turning to the room. Director Nicholson, please.
Thank you. I am very supportive of a vice chair stipend, and I would have even suggested $9,000 for a number of reasons, but mainly because I believe that we really need to evolve to a more collaborative model. I was the vice chair in the first year of this term, and as Director Acton indicated, I did very little, and not because I didn't want to. And I think that if you set a stipend, then the expectation then of the chair and of staff is to involve you and use you because you're there and to be helpful and to learn. And I would say I'm not in generally supportive of high salaries or whatever you want to call them, remuneration for us, because I think I agree with Director Martin, we have to think about what the community can afford. But I also think you want to encourage people who really want to work for their community, not to do this job because of the money, and also because it's such an amazing opportunity to learn. And so if you have the privilege of being the chair or the vice chair or a committee chair, you have an opportunity that none of the other directors that weren't doing that job of learning. And so that is remuneration of a kind. I can't remember what the other thing I was going to say. But what I would really like to do right now is to refer this whole discussion to a future date, because I think we need some information. I'd like to have staff look at maybe providing some recommendations on how we can continue to evolve this into a more collaborative learning kind of organization. Because I also really believe it is not healthy for the organization to have the same people in those learning roles. Because if you want to have a strong board, term after term, you need to have people who have had the opportunity to grow and learn. And it takes time, I understand that, but it also, if you can get really complacent if you just keep having the same people do the job. And I don't think that's healthy. So I would like more discussion and thought around that in context of the remuneration. And I don't know how to turn that into a referral motion. Like specifics of what I want staff to do. Maybe staff could help me. But they've gone.
They haven't. You're keen to refer item 4?
I'm keen to.
And
I'm keen to refer the rest of the discussion about remuneration for various positions to a broader conversation about how we can use remuneration to helpfully make us more collaborative. And remuneration in a broad sense is what I'm talking about. Learning,
I like the ethos, but first of all, is there a seconder for Director Nicholson's? Ian's hand is up, but that's for a question. I don't see a seconder. Do I? I'm afraid the referral dies on the floor.
You've got to evolve.
But as I was trying to say, I don't disagree with the ethos, but I think it's perhaps a subject for a future governance to talk about. Okay, I'm going to turn to Director Morrison, who's again been waiting patiently.
I would second the motion because I'm sitting here with this sense of directors around the table wanting to discuss the meat of all of what we're discussing, and to Director Nicholson's credit, that segment of this, but it's my sense is we're rushing to get a policy when we haven't got the supportive discussion to be full-throated behind the policy. So I would second the motion to refer this item for further discussion, and going back to the fact that we've been talking for years about a stipend for the vice chair and committee chairs and electoral area services committee chair. But that just seems to have fallen by the wayside because somebody didn't direct staff to do it. I don't remember the direction that we gave to staff on this report. And I'm sure that had I been in the room, the committee chair compensation would have been part of it. It seems inappropriate to move ahead with the board vice chair stipend when we have clearly been discussing for years the issue around committee chair stipend as well. So it's feeling pretty half-baked to me right now, and I apologize if that word offends folks, but we're putting a policy in place, and there's a whole bunch of discussion seems to need to be held.
It would appear we have a seconder for referring that a board vice chair stipend of $77.50 be considered later.
I don't think that was the motion from Director Nicholson.
She wanted Director.
Your Honor, I think it was a broader discussion, not necessarily with respect to number 4, but I could be correct in what you did say.
Do you want to?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Would you like to articulate your referral motion, which Director Morrison is prepared to second?
Oh, thank you, Director Morrison. I would like to refer this for further discussion, but I'd also like to have some staff input on potentially reviewing the job descriptions to understand how we could ensure that we remain moving in a direction of a collaborative governance model.
So this is not a referral of number 4, but
It's a referral of all the rest of the
Generally-
discussions.
generally the specifics with respect to. Mr. Chair, yeah, and I think for the record, we need to understand the motion more succinctly, and it doesn't appear that it's specifically number 4, which Director Morrison had mentioned specifically, and it seems to highlight portions of number 3 in terms of the policy that you're trying to set, that you would have a review, and the specifics of which will be determined by the direction of the board. So
Perhaps we could look to a notice of motion for board chair remuneration stipend, vice chair stipend, and committee chair stipends and direction.
I don't believe that is what Director Nicholson was attempting to do. That's why I'm just trying to get, for the record, clarification on her motion.
Go ahead, Director. Point of order.
Point of order. We've considered 2 referral motions already that have failed to this point, so I would request that the chair call this referral motion out of order. It's been very clear this committee would like to make some decisions today, and this is our place to have this discussion right now in this governance committee.
I'm going to take advice from Director Segal and declare this motion out of order. Is that what you said? Yeah, okay. Okay. That's my ruling. So, go ahead.
Can I speak?
Of course.
I am feeling very uncomfortable because there are a lot of people who are feeling uncomfortable, I think, about a number of the points. And I think if we could just take a pause and get a review of the job descriptions, particularly the vice chair job description, and from staff, then I think we could come back and have a more productive conversation.
Okay, here, I'm going to turn to Director Segal.
Oh, I'm back on. Look, I totally understand the desire for a co-governance model, the desire for change, and we have had those conversations when we reviewed our position descriptions, and we made our position descriptions as collaborative as possible within the bounds of the legislation. Our legislation is still very constricting at this time. So I totally understand where Director Nicholson is coming from, and I agree, but we've had those discussions and we can't do much more than what we've got, and I think introducing delaying the introduction of a vice chair stipend delays the progress that I think we are trying to inchworm our way towards.
He's been waiting patiently. Director Manhas. Oh, push the button again.
It automatically goes on. Turn it green.
And
Thank you. This is not to the referral motion, it's a motion, we're not, the referral motion is off the table now.
That's right.
Okay. I will not be supporting this, especially adding more burden to our taxpayers. Most senior levels of government are implementing salary freezes, hiring freezes, and here all we're doing at this table is adding more and more tax and burden onto our taxpayers. I will not be supporting this.
Thank you, Director Manhas. Director Mike.
Thank you. So hang on a second. Which are we on at the moment?
We're back-
Referral motion?
No, it failed.
Okay, that was out of order.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. So we're back on that vice chair stipend of 700, whatever it is. I cannot believe that one sentence can lead to such a broad discussion. I've seen discussion on committee chairs, let's give them some money. Committee vice chairs, this is it, right here, that the board vice chair stipend be added. I know how hard this lady here works, and I know how hard he works. They deserve to get the money. So I'll leave it at that, but I will be supporting this one. I think we're still on this one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Wilson. Going online, Director Acton. Today.
It really feels like that, whenever we've mentioned that what am I comparing this to? There actually is no information.
Director Acton, Director McClinton's calling the...
I was told that my own experience was not legitimized, that things have changed. Meanwhile, I was the vice chair to our previous board chair, so I'm not sure how far I need to go. And so we should be looking at this with some actual supporting information. It's not that I disagree, but I also would compare it to the electoral area's chair. I personally wouldn't even want that role because it's a lot of work. So
Okay, I think...
if we're going to be changing the remuneration structure, we should be looking at it as a whole.
Okay, we've heard that. I think we're ready to call the question. Point of order, Director Segal.
I'm so sorry. I feel like we have a Robert's Rules situation because I did hear call the question, which I think we're supposed to just call the question, but it's also been brought to my attention there is an important amendment, which is just to add the language of at the end that it's adjusted annually based on the previous year's Victoria BC Consumer Price Index, effective January 1 each year. So that same kind of ending from the other resolutions.
From... I think Director Segal is saying that there should be symmetry, that 4, 5, and 6 should be worded the same. Are we ready for, so, the Corporate Secretary is going to add the amendment or the addition of, and then adjusted annually based on the previous year's.
It's number 6.
It's number 6, it's number 5, that last clause. Amended by Director Segal. Do we have a seconder for the amendment? Estash, are we ready for the question? No further comment. Are we ready? All in favor to the amended? Against? We have Manhas, Acton, and Martman and Morrison against. Now on the main motion as amended. All in favor? Against? Morrison, Martman, Manhas. Acton. Motion carried. Moving on to item 5. Item 4, no, item 5. You have,
Okay, carry.
we don't get paid otherwise. Okay, moving on to item 5. Does that need to be read out?
That municipal area director remuneration be increased by 5% in the first year of the 2027 board term, then adjusted annually based on the previous year's Victoria, BC Consumer Price Index, effective January 1 each year.
Is there any input on this item? Director Manhas.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'll be voting against this again for the same reason I voted against the stipend for the board chair. I just, at this time, to add any extra remuneration for the municipal area directors, I think it's not advised, is given the tight fiscal capacity we're in, and so I'm not going to be voting for this.
Thank you, Director Manhas. And I would imagine when we get to 6, you're going to have the same, so suffice to say we don't need to hear it a third time. Are we ready for the question? Oh, we've got Mr. Director Martman online.
Thank you. And, you know, yeah, maybe I should say this for 5, 6, and 7 and all. It's just, yeah, it's the same philosophy that, yes, people are very demonstratively, you know, worth this, but this is not the right message we should be sending.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Martman. We've heard that in a previous course, and you're applying that to items 6 as well. Do I have any other comments? Director Segal. Try it again.
Thank you so much, Chair, and this will also apply, I'll just say that once. I think it's really important that we compensate all directors fairly. We want to, you know, the workload has grown significantly. We want to strengthen our accountability and professionalism. We want to be able to compensate any kind of person from all walks of life, whatever job they have, that they can still live in our community and serve in this governance role. I want to remove those barriers, and I think having a proper remuneration that is in line with in line with other regional districts is important. So I'll be supporting this and number 6.
Thank you, Director. And I jumped right past you, Director Tatum.
Yes, I won't be supporting this. I agree with some of the other directors that it seems like kind of an arbitrary amount, although I've been supportive of the other ones. This one, it just seems like it's, as I say, it seems a little bit arbitrary to me, and I won't be supportive of it.
Thank you. Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I concur with my seatmate here. I would like clarification, or I would like to make sure that municipal directors, if they do not get benefits in their municipality, that they are eligible for ours. I really think that should be codified.
I think I'd have to turn to staff whether municipal directors, are they eligible to subscribe to our CVRD benefit? I think we heard this.
Haven't received a response yet from our benefits coordinator, but as I mentioned earlier, the benefits are intended to be applied right across the entirety of the board.
Thank you. Are we ready for the question on 5? All in, Director Estash.
Again, I'll speak this, actually, I've never actually spoke to it. The amount of meetings in just the last year that the municipal directors have had to attend, it's got to be up 30%, it feels like, and especially governance meetings. 5% for another 40% of work. We're at 4 hours here almost already, you know? So
Thank you, Director.
just I'll be supporting number 5.
So, are we ready for the question? All in favor of written as 5? And against? Do I have to read all the names? It looks like it fails. So, Wilson, Callio, Nicholson, Tatum, Manhas, Martman, Morrison. The motion, that portion of the motion fails. Moving on to item 6. Are we ready to? The will of the room wants it, the question to be brought forth. Are we in favor of item 6? All in favor?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Director Akin.
So I'm just trying to understand why the 5% increase happens twice. And
It
is
happens.
that going to happen twice in each term?
No, it's to play, as staff indicated earlier, it's to to catch up the 17% that the chair is behind the median at present. And instead of doing it all in 1 year, 5% in 27 and 5% in 28, along with the CPI, will align that position by the end of 28. Are we ready? Oh, Director Morrison. Or unless you had to follow up, Director Akin? No. Director Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. In my view, the appropriate way to address this is to make the adjustment in 2026, and then you don't have to have this as part of a future cast policy. If it's identified to be so far out of whack that we have a responsibility as this board to make the correction if we feel that it's that far out of whack, as opposed to a 5 and 5 in a policy that is essentially giving direction to the community for some, or to the next board as to something we've identified as out of whack today. So I won't be supporting this resolution. Thank you.
I'm looking around. There does not appear to be any further comments. Are we ready for the question on 6? All in favor? And against? Directors Manhas, Tatum, Nicholson, Marchman, and Morrison. I can't do math in my head that fast. Can we have the hands that support highly raised? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's do the, if you're in favor of this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and online 8, 9. It carried. Moving on to item 7. Ian, Director Morrison, is your hand up about item 7? It's down. Any further? Ready for the question? All in favor of item 7? Opposed? Directors Bartman, Morrison. Carried. Item 8. Staff, are we ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? McClinton. Morrison. Martman and Acton. Motion carried. Thank you, directors. There is one item left, but in light of people's patience, can the topic of correspondence be tabled to a future meeting of the Governance Committee? Do I need a motion to that effect? The mics have motioned. Point of Segal.
I think this one's really easy. We don't need a presentation. I would move the recommendation.
Do we have a seconder? Director Nicholson, any input? Dialogue? None. Ready for the question? All in favor?
Read the recommendation.
That it be recommended to the board that the board correspondence policy be adopted.
Ooh, I can. Director Acton online. Go ahead.
I can wait until this passes because I was expecting another motion to come out of our last discussion on the last topic.
We can return to that.
We can, we'll return to that. You're absolutely right,
you.
Director Acton. So let's vote on this recommendation. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Any against? Seeing none. Oh, Director Morrison is against the correspondence policy. Motion carried. Director Acton, do you want to bring up Director Segal, go ahead, please.
Sorry, Director Acton, I don't know if this might be in line with what you're thinking of. Thank you for reminding me. I wanted to make a referral motion for staff to research and come back to the governance committee regarding committee chair stipends.
Is there a seconder for this referral motion? Director McGonigal? Discussion? Seeing none? Director Acton?
Yeah, we should also have some of that information around the vice chair roles and responsibilities and how we see that role developing. We should at least have the discussion.
Can that be incorporated in? Okay. Does staff?
We're okay with that.
Okay. The staff can incorporate that into the motion. Are we ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And I think we're ready for, there's no unfinished business, new business, question period. Doesn't appear to be any. We're not going into closed. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Director Segal. All in favor? Carried. And I don't know if there's lunch. We'll see everybody back at thank you, municipal directors.